Recording. Okay.
Awesome. That's what I see. Welcome,
Excellent.
everyone.
Excellent. Okay. Okay. We'll get through interview.
Okay, I believe we are live.
We're coming in from everywhere. We're so live.
Let me turn off that additional feedback there. I thought I clicked it. I had not. Okay. Now we're good. Okay. So introductions. First of all, welcome everyone who's joining. I see some people are already hopping on. I'm Amanda Painter, and this is my co-author, Brenda Hare. And
Glad to
we're
be here.
authors of the Team Solution series, which is a 4-book series on HR solutions for your business, and it follows the employee journey. Today, we're specifically talking about onboarding. We'll probably reference a little bit in some of the other books as it all ties together throughout the employee journey, but today's focus is onboarding and how mentoring and onboarding well all plays a huge role into the retention of our employees. And we've got some tools to share on how to do that. Many of you have registered and opted in to get those tools. We've got a digital download with the tools that we'll be discussing today. If you have not done that yet, I will drop the link in the chat for that. And we will send those. We have sent them. If you already registered, they should have been in your inbox just a couple of minutes ago. If you have not registered, you can do so now, and we'll resend it again once this recording is done, and we'll send the tools again so you can download it then.
And you'll get the replay as well. So if you happen
Yes.
to duck out early or anything like that, you won't miss anything.
Yes.
This is a live workshop. So we are here live February 22nd. So do drop your comments in the our questions in the comments, because we love answering people's questions as we go through the content today. The other really big exciting news that I'm going to just drop the bomb is that this book that we're focused on today, the onboarding process, is a #1 new release for audiobooks. We're so excited that this series is now available in audio, because we know you guys are busy entrepreneurs, business builders, and it's better to listen while you commute or listen while you exercise or whatever else you're doing. For me, it's listening while I'm getting dressed. And so if that's you, now you can go grab it on audio as well and listen to the entire process. So I'm really happy that happened and that it's been well received by them. So #1 new release. Congratulations.
Yes, that was exciting. It was exciting. Yes, this is now an audiobook format, which sometimes it takes a little bit of time post paperback and ebook and everything else being released. So, all right. Any other housekeeping items I have missed, Brenda? I think
I don't think so.
Okay.
They can grab the toolbox as well for the book when they get to that point, but the tools for today is what they want to focus on. If they have them, they can follow along while we go through this. So if you have them and you can we go through it, that'll be helpful for you. So
yes. And so we'll get started. A lot of this will be just the two of us talking. I'll also screen share and walk through the tools a little bit. And as we go through, jump in, ask questions. As Brenda said, this is live, and that this is a reason why we do it. We want to know what questions you have. We can speak on this forever. But the most benefit you can get out of it is letting us know, what are your challenges? What's your concerns with onboarding and retention, so that we can address those specifically.
Yeah, I have a question for anybody watching so far. I would like to know, who has ever been mentored during the onboarding process, or been a mentor? So put mentored or mentor in the comments and let us know if you've ever been mentored or been a mentor. I can tell you that the only time I've ever had a mentor during onboarding was when I was in the Air Force, and so my mentor, I actually didn't meet him until about a month into being there. And so it was kind of like, you're too late, dude. Like, where have you been? But my daughter just recently got a job. She started Monday of this week, and she was sharing with me what a great experience she had on Monday, because she had a mentor with her all day, walking her through all the new processes and checklists and all the things that she's gonna be doing. So she was very excited to have the systems in place. And she just said, Mom, I feel like this is going to be a great job already. It was day 1, but because they had the systems, it made all the difference.
And that is so much of the pivotal part of this, is taking the time to set up these processes well. will just build the success of your company. And alarming statistics of that we see in a lot of studies and everything are about how employees do not feel that they are onboarded well or have mentor opportunities. One specific one is that from Gallup that only 12% of the employees believe that their organization did a good job when it came to onboarding. And as business leaders, we put in so much time to recruitment and hiring process, and we want to find that right person. And then we throw them in the deep end.
Pretty much throw them to the wolves, pretty much.
Throw them to the wolves, throw them in the deep end, and hope that they can swim on their own. And that is not what's going to create long-term success for the employee or for your company, because you've put in all this time and energy into them and finding them and securing them, and you want to make sure that you're keeping them around. As turnover is costly, incredibly costly. It's one of the biggest costs that the company has. And this is where leaders need to make sure we have a shift in the mindset of building on these onboarding processes, and mentoring is an investment. It's not an expense. It's an investment, because if you don't do it, then you're going to have to go through the recruitment and hiring process all over again.
And let's talk about, first, Alicia, thank you for commenting. She said she's been both. Let's talk about the investment, because it's not only that you're investing in your new hire, but you're also investing in the employee that is the mentor. So as the mentor, now they're feeling elevated in their position. They're taking on more responsibility. Hopefully you're rewarding them. We're going to talk a little bit about that later, but you're rewarding them in some aspect. And so now you're retaining an employee that maybe has been for a while. You're maybe giving them something new and exciting to focus on. And that's a retention that a lot of people don't look at, because they're looking at onboarding only retaining the person that you're onboarding, but it's also retaining the mentor, the person that the valued employee that you want to, the shining rock star of your business, right? That you want to keep. Choose those people company, not just because we want them to be, make a good first impression on our new hire, but we want to keep those people. And so we want them to feel valued. And that goes into a lot of how we set the mentor up for success, not just the person being mentored.
Yes, absolutely. And so we're talking about mentors, and we address this in the book, and I think it's worth highlighting, is what a mentor really is and what a mentor isn't. And this is where the lines can get a little blurred and some confusion can kind of step in. And as we have it in the book, like, a mentor's not a trainer. That's a different capacity. And it also shouldn't be like the direct supervisor, because that person's a supervisor of them. They're not necessarily their mentor. It needs to be someone else, but it needs to be someone who it's a guide to company culture. It's that touch point that they have if they feel lost, but it's helping guide them through the company, not the specifics of daily tasks. Now, while some of that could come into play, but it's more about someone who can teach them about the mission and vision of the company. And this person exudes their core values and can provide support for questions. But this is someone in your company who is committed and is looking out for the best interest of the company and anybody who is hired by the company. So it's really important to think through that, not just, oh, well, that's the senior person in their department, I'm going to have them be their mentor. And if that person doesn't meet that criteria, then it's actually more detrimental to the entire system. Being mentored by someone who does not want to be a mentor is never going to be productive. At that point, it's at a loss.
Absolutely. And it's the same with the trainer. Like you said, if someone's the trainer, it's usually someone training someone else for a position is oftentimes the person exiting the position, person to take over their roles and responsibilities. And that's pretty much the last person you want to be somebody's mentor, is the person who's leaving your company, whether it's on good terms or not. That's probably not the person that's going to have the best things to say about your company and the longevity of your company and all of those things. So you really want to look at who that person is. I was watching a comedian recently, and he was talking about getting paid for a 2 weeks notice. And he was like, who came up with this 2 weeks notice idea? And he was like, you want to pay me to quit and to be just hanging around for an extra 2 weeks? Sure. And that's oftentimes how people feel when they're exiting a company. They're like, Some people really feel like I want to wrap up my loose ends. I want to do my best to leave on a good note. I want to set your company up for success as I leave. Some people are that way. Some people are also like, I'm going to do the bare minimum for the next 2 weeks and you're going to pay me. And so that's the last person you really want mentoring you don't really even want them training your new hire. You really don't. And so knowing the difference between the mentor and the trainer is really, really huge.
Yes, agreed. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and we'll do a little bit on the digital tool that is shared for the download for today's workshop. So this is on the second page and it talks about mentoring. And this is something for if you are the only leader that's kind of deciding this, work through this on your own. If you've got a leadership team, this is a great activity. You all need to sit down together and do this and brainstorm it and let it be a collaborative effort on who on your team would be good mentors. Just start with what the basics, how are they when it comes to the core values and how dedicated are they to the company? Do they communicate well? Yeah, those really important things as far as building relationships.
How's their time capacity? Do they even have, they may be the shining star of the company and you may really want them to be the mentor, but if they don't have the time capacity to give to the role, it's probably not something you want to add to their schedule.
Yes, definitely. Or do you need to find some way to relieve part of, if that person would be the best mentor, how can you reduce some of their workload or maybe adjust some goals or something that they're working on? So, and then the next one, and this is often missed, but we put it as number 2 because it is this important, is that how are they going to be compensated, rewarded, or recognized for these additional responsibilities? Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't necessarily always have to be a dollar exchange. There's a myriad of ways that it can be done, but if there's not going to be compensation for it, then you definitely have to take into account how many hours this is going to take of their time. And you have to adjust their workload accordingly, because if they're a shining star at your company and they're getting things done and they're productive, they're not going to be able to continue to do that if you've added this other item to their plate, nor is that setting them up to be retained. We want to show the appreciation and that we appreciate what they're doing.
Yeah, you want to show appreciation for that they're a shining star in your company, not just dump added responsibilities on them because they're the shining star. Because if they're truly the shining star, they're going to feel taken advantage of and they're probably going to end up leaving because they're going to be like, I'm already doing my job fantastically. And now you're going to dump all these extra responsibilities on me that I didn't want to begin with. And you're not going to compensate me for them. I can go elsewhere and be rewarded for my skills and talents. And so you want to make sure that there's some kind of compensation, whatever that looks like. And like Amanda said, there's many ways to do that. It could be additional time off. It could be financial. It could be a spa day, whatever works within your company culture.
Yes, definitely. And then as you brainstorm this with your leadership team, think of who's going to create a mentorship training, because we need to train our mentors so that they're working. And it may just be that your company is, depending on the size, it may just be that you have one mentor who handles all of this. Or if you have a larger company and you want a mentor per department, then there needs to be some standard training that goes into that, so they are all working towards the same goals as a mentor. So who's going to do that? And then when's the goal for rolling this out? Always set goals so that you can have a timeline of when it's going to start and when it's going to finish, and when the next project will follow along from this. And the next page of this tool is a checklist that the mentor can use. And this is suggestions, and it may be very different for your company, but this is a starting point. So, they need to schedule a meeting with the new hire, determine a regular schedule. We recommend that they meet regularly with them for the first 90 days. That's how long onboarding often is. Not always, might be shorter, might be longer. 90 days is kind of the typical average. What kind of communication parameters and availability will they have? And I think this is a really important one, because we don't want a new hire to just be showing up in the mentor's office unannounced every day. The mentor needs to feel empowered to say, this is our schedule. And if you need something in between this time, send me an email or gather everything and send me one email at the end of the week, whatever it may be, but be sure that there's communication parameters there.
It's the same with the 90-day period. So whether your onboarding period is 90 days or whatever that time frame is, make sure that you not only communicate that with your mentor on the front end and let them know what the expectations are of them, but let the employee being onboarded know that as well, so that they realize, like, after 90 days, good working relationship with this mentor, we don't expect this mentor to carry you for the rest of your career at our company. Like, there needs to be some kind of parameters there so they kind of have an end point.
Yes, you definitely want an endpoint. And you want your mentors to review the core values. As we've mentioned, this is the person who really lives the core values at your company. And then they can share some of their favorite highlights of being at the company with the mentee, client testimonials, their favorite part of working there, company success stories. And then it gives some tips for the mentor on that sheet as well. And that's general basics of how you can brainstorm this with your team to get it started. And then, as Brenda was touching on, the 90 days, and is there an endpoint? And is there an endpoint? And this goes back to onboarding in general. There needs to be an endpoint. Now, it doesn't have to be a hard end that you're done now and good luck. But if there's an endpoint, what's the goal for that endpoint? And what do you want the new employee to be able to do well? And this is something that the mentor can work with them on, but then also whoever is handling their hire orientation, whoever leads this employee needs to know what are the goals that will happen at the end of 90 days. Is it that they're working independently on a certain project, that they are fully trained on whatever computer system and software needs to be done? And once that is established, you've got what goals they're working towards, and you can work on setting these goals and setting milestones for the goals in between. And at the end of our packet, we have our goal map, which is something that we use tremendously across our business. And we recommend it with everybody that we work with consulting on. We've got to establish those goals. What does success look like for the goal? What does success look like for the end of the orientation period? And how can we get there? And if we don't articulate it and really step it out into pieces, then it's hard. Then you're approaching the end of your 90 days. You're like, oh, I don't know if we're going to get there. And it's like, well, we didn't really break it down into steps in between.
Well, and there's a part on the goal map that actually asks for this goal is going to be accomplished with. And this is where you would put in, if there's a trainer, this goal is going to be accomplished with the trainer. This goal is going to be accomplished with the mentor. Who are the parties that are going to help your new hire accomplish their goals that you've set out for them? And as we teach through the goal map, we tell you that whoever you put in that box there and whoever you fill in the blank with there, that person needs to be notified, not only that they're the point of contact for this, but what this person's goals are, so that they're in the loop on what they should be actually helping the person with.
Yes, because they need to put that into their timeline of what they're working on, and do they need things adjusted and expectations adjusted. And that's what so much with the goals, or we're setting expectations for our new hire. If our new hire doesn't know what the expectations are, then they can't meet the expectations. And this is where so much, and this is a common theme throughout our entire series of books, is it really comes down to communication. Are we communicating well? Are we communicating in a way that the employee understands? Are things written down where they can reference them? Do they have everything they need, or are they sitting in their office unsure of what they need to be working on, who they're supposed to contact? And so much of the onboarding book is about the connection, and that's connection to tools, software, those tangible things, but it's also the relationship connection of what department does what and who is where and how do I get in touch with them? What's the company standard for these communication questions? Yeah. So very much continuing on, communicate well, do it very intentionally. But once you set up this process, replicate it, continue to do it through all the onboarding for everybody. We've got the question from Michelle here about how do you recommend setting up the mentor to be successful on a company level? She mentioned not everybody wants to do it, even likes doing it. Previously worked at a company where it was requirement and results were not great. Were great when not fully engaged. Yes, absolutely. If someone's not fully engaged and forced into being a mentor, then they're not going to do it well. I mean, most likely.
It really starts from the vision, right? So the visionary, whoever's leading that needs to paint a picture of what this looks like. And you could almost, you don't necessarily want to open it up like we're taking volunteers for mentors, because what's going to happen is you're going to get the people who you would not want to represent your company running to volunteer because of whatever reasons. So you want to let them know that with excitement that you're creating this new, opportunity, and that you'll be reaching out to, different people, and that it's not a requirement, but that why are you asking them? Like, put value into it. Let them know that they are a star employee. They exude the company values. They will be some kind of compensation for the role. They understand you, like, you have to come alongside of the people and say, we understand your workload. You have to put yourself in their shoes and understand that this is going to affect their workload. But at the same time, like we just talked about, it's temporary. Unless you're hiring, one person after another and you need a dedicated mentor role, then that's a whole different discussion. But for the most part, new hires at most companies are happening sporadically. And so there's some breathing space. And if you have more than one person in the role, then are taking these responsibilities on, then you can spread those out. So letting them know the expectations, but having someone forced into the role is never a good.
Yeah,
never
it's
good.
definitely
And
not
builds resentment, and that's not the retention we talked about earlier about retaining that employee. That's never a good thing.
No, because that's not, being a mentor is not necessarily in everyone's capacity. That may not be their skill set. That may not be what they're passionate about. And when we're that's essentially forcing a new job duty on them that they didn't agree to do when you hired them.
Exactly.
And like, was that part of their job description? Now, you can absolutely, as companies grow, you add things to people's job description, but you communicate it well with them. And when it's, and that's when you may lose employees if they don't want to continue to do that. They're like, that's not what I was hired for. That's not why I'm here. And if this is going to be forced on me, I'm either going to do a really subpar job at it, or I'm going to go elsewhere where I'm not forced to do that. So you really run the risk of when you're forcing that type of thing. But as far as success for mentors, I think, it's the first question on the sheet is, this is where you think who would be the best. And you choose those people very intentionally, and you communicate with them why. And this, being a mentor should be viewed as a development opportunity for them.
And an honor, really. I mean, it's an honor that they were selected, right? Because the way you talk about it with them is that we've seen you exude the core values of our company. You are a shining star in our company. And so it's just, you're recognizing, them for their skill set that they bring to the table. If you have a larger company, like Amanda mentioned earlier, and you have a leadership team, it's great if you can sit down with your leadership team and just kind of brainstorm, who are these people in your company? And it may be one department has 2 or 3 people that just shine because maybe it's the customer service department and they're just really good at customer service. Those people may be great mentors across other departments. It doesn't have to be one department mentors only that one department. It's actually great if you can cross over the departments, because then you're just building more company culture across. People are learning different things across the company, how different departments work, who different people are in the company, all those things. And so if you can blend it, it works even better. But it just depends on the company's size, who's going to be in that role. But if you have people to brainstorm it with, it's so helpful, because especially as a leader of a company, you may not work one-on-one with these individuals to even know who the shining stars are. You may think you know who the shining stars are, but then when you talk to their leadership, they may say, no, she's late every day, or she's this, or she's a horrible team player, or she's this. Or they may say, oh, you don't know about so-and-so. She's not been on your radar screen because she is a rock star. She gets to work early. She stays late. She does her job, like whatever that is for your company. And so working with everybody else and getting other people's inputs, it's invaluable.
Yes, definitely. It should be anything and we reference this a lot in the book series, is as you're creating these processes for your company, let it be a collaborative effort. When you get buy-in from others in the company on it, you're more likely to retain those people. They're going to be supporters of the program, and it overall will build a better company culture. So, and as Brenda mentioned, and I think this is a really good important thing to highlight, is mentors don't have to be in the same department.
Mhm.
because mentorship is about culture, and culture is not job title specific. Culture
Right.
is base requirements, expectations for every single employee. And this is where in onboarding, and we discuss this at length in the book, the difference between orientation and onboarding training.
Mhm.
Training is one capacity of onboarding. Orientation is just one other capacity. Orientation is talking about the culture and the history of it and who founded it and what our mission is and what our goals are as a big picture for a company. And that is where the mentor comes into play. It is those things that the mentor helps with. When it comes down to what's the process document on how you do certain jobs, absolutely very important things to have, but that's not the mentor's job. That comes into the training. And once you really differentiate the difference, you realize you actually probably open up the doors a little bit more to who mentors can be. They don't have to know how to do every task in this person's job. They don't even have to understand it really. As as long as they do their job well and they are a shining star for your company, then they can help teach the new person more about your company. Just be a supportive person for them, help them navigate. If they have questions, the mentor may not necessarily know the answer to the question if they're in a different department or something, but they know how to find the information for them or guide them the correct way to find the information so they don't feel like they're alone.
Absolutely. And it's questions like, um, wasn't I supposed to sign this form? Who do I talk to about that? And the mentor can, oh, that's HR, and direct them back there, right? It's not, oh, let me get you the form and do this for you and walk you through the steps, but it's directing them to who in the company can to serve them better. I think of questions like, where's the cafeteria? Like these simple questions like that. If you have a large company, going to lunch with them, and we reference that in the book. It may be that you have a lunch date, maybe that you have a coffee date with the mentor, and that you're just sitting down and saying, okay, how are things going? How are you feeling about things? Have you had a taste of the company culture yet? Are you, liking what you're seeing? And just getting some feedback from them, getting them to talk, getting them comfortable with the company culture as a whole. It's not the time for a complaint session. And so we talk about that in the book as well. We talk about how, if the person is coming to you with questions that should be directed to their supervisor, you need to direct them back to their supervisor. If they're coming to you with just a bunch of complaints and that type of thing, then it needs to be addressed. Whatever that complaint is, needs to be addressed accordingly. So if they're not getting what they need from their supervisor, then maybe you and the new employee need to go back to the supervisor and say, hey, they had some questions. And that mentor can almost go in as kind of an advocate for them and say, they had some questions that they didn't feel like got answered. Can you help them out? And sometimes it's a communication issue, right? And so maybe it just wasn't communicated where they could understand it. And so this person's kind of a buffer for them. But it's not that they are the person solving all the problems and correcting everything and fixing everything. They're not that person.
Yep. And that's where that intervention, the mentor can serve as someone who's helping with intervention. If they're getting the feedback, feedback's huge. You always gathering feedback, always gathering feedback. And we reference that a lot. And this is part of the mentor training that you would want to develop for your company. It's what do the mentors need to do if they're getting this type of negative feedback and concerns? Obviously, they don't just need to sit there and say, oh, well, I'm sorry, and do nothing about it, because that's
Or
not.
join the pity party. Yeah, they
Or
certainly
yes,
don't
or
need to-
join in
yeah.
the pity party. Then you're going to have two
Yeah.
people that are ready to leave your company because they've decided together that it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So you want to train the mentor on how to handle this so that there can be an intervention and redirection. So going back to supervisor, manager, whoever that point of contact needs to be. But if you catch things like this early, there can very much easily be a course correction and that can be the difference in retaining your employee, which is really the entire point. So if there's something wasn't communicated well, someone just dropped the ball on something and it happens. And that information, that access, whatever it was, didn't get to the new hire. And the mentor can hear about this, can go and run it up the flagpole to who needs to know it, and it can be corrected and communicated well to the new hire. Sorry, this is our error. Thank you for bringing our attention to it. And then the new hire realizes that their voice matters.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they spoke up and said something, they were listened to and got a good response out of it. So now moving forward, they know if they've got questions or concerns that someone's going to listen to them. And that's going to make them so much more likely to stick around and stay with the company and work towards the vision with everyone else.
Yeah, and that really is a bigger lesson for companies as a whole, right? Because anytime someone gives you feedback, if you don't take it and process it and do something with it, whatever the position is, then that's where holes start, cracks start happening within the company. People start leaving, people start falling through the cracks, those type of things. So anytime anyone gets feedback, it's just a great training for your leadership as a whole. And that mentor is considered a leader in your company. So you want to make sure that they're trained on what to do with feedback, bad, right? And how to celebrate the wins. If it comes back and they're just like, oh my gosh, my trainer was fantastic. Like, I feel like I learned my whole job in one day and I'm good to go. And I'm already making sales, or I'm already doing this and I'm already doing that. Then that's fantastic feedback. And what do they do with that? Like, the mentor, great pat on the back, or do they actually celebrate it with the company? Like, where do they put that win for the company? Are they sharing it on your weekly win board? Are they sharing it with the trainer? Are they sharing it with the department head? Like, where's that going that they're celebrating the good as well?
Yes. Yes. And this is more in one of our other books in the series, but we say it often is never miss an opportunity to obtain feedback. But the subtext to that is, but you also have to act on it. So don't just, we'll take all the surveys and all the information and then never do anything with it. Because then people are going to stop doing it because you're not continuing with.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't mean you have to implement every single idea, because some ideas may not be good or they may not be feasible. But you do at least need to take it into consideration, figure out what's best for the company, and just always have open ears to the suggestions that others have.
And I think that's where companies as a whole, and we're kind of going into other parts of the series, but companies as a whole, if they have to know how to acknowledge the feedback, even if when someone gives you feedback, you don't have to change the whole company or make these, but acknowledging their feedback and that they've been heard is what they need, and then redirect or correct accordingly. But that you have to acknowledge that they've been heard. Thank you for your feedback. We receive it. We're taking it into consideration, whatever that looks like for your company.
Yes. And Veta just made the comment of, so true. When people are heard, things can change rapidly. Yes. And this is where it's all about communication, and communication is also listening, not just speaking. Like,
right.
That's it. Communication is a two-way street, not a one-way street. It's not announcements. It is hearing information and receiving information and giving it back in a clear and effective manner.
Absolutely.
So on the tools that we are talking about, and we touched on this with goal setting, I want to get into that a little bit more because it is such a crucial piece of retaining employees when it comes to onboarding, because onboarding is often overlooked, or maybe not overlooked the first couple weeks, and then it kind of trails off. And if we don't set these goals ahead of time,
I think the bigger problem with most companies, and I think you'd agree, is that they consider orientation onboarding. You've spoken earlier that those are two very different things. And so what we're headed into now with goal setting really separates the difference. I mean, obviously you want to include some of the orientation pieces in goals for the first 90 days, but the orientation is not the onboarding. So very different tools, if you will. So this goal setting sheet is really going to help you determine for your new hire, what does onboarding look like for them? And so I'll let Amanda walk us through this.
Yes. And this is something, and this is just a small component of this. There's more in-depth information about it in the book, but what overall company goals do you have that are important to share with the new hire? And this is where, do you have company goals? Does the leadership team sit down and decide what these are? And our books talk more about that and in depth and how to do it. But obviously there is some sort of company goal. And how does the new hire support it? Are they in a sales department? Are they in customer service? Are they in IT? What does their job function do that supports the overall company goal? And when you can make that connection for them, they feel like they're a part of the vision and the mission, and they are more likely to be retained and to get on board.
The secret to knowing the answer to this is, why did you hire them to begin with? When we talked last month about hiring, and when we talk in the hiring process book, we talk about when you create your job description, you're creating a role to solve a problem in your company. So the problem that their role solves should support your bigger vision, and that's where this should be coming from. So you don't have to sit down and think, oh, I got to recreate the wheel. What is their role? What's the goal? No, look at the job description and say, okay, what did I hire this person for that I need immediate results in? And then transfer that information over to this.
Yes, definitely. So then work through each of these prompts with your new hire. And then I'll show you the goal map that's on the next page. But what does success look like for them in the next 3 months? And we touched on that a little bit earlier. What will they accomplish in this time frame? And make sure that these goals are reasonable when you're setting them and something that's really tangible that they can do. Are they going to be fully trained, working independently? Or maybe it's something that would take even longer than that. Or maybe it's something that would take a shorter amount of time than that, and we can put an end date on it then. Is there something that they're creating, implementing? And all of this is so much job specific items. But again, as Brenda said, you want to go back to the job description and see what that was that you listed there. And then when it comes to the goal map, you want to have the goal stated very clearly so everybody understands what it is. Put the due date, if that is at the end of the 90 days. If you do 60 days, you do 120 days, whatever your onboarding process is. What problem does it solve? Obviously, you hired this person to solve a problem. So that is the problem. That's what we're working towards. And the solution is
right. This problem may also be that, so this particular goal map is for the new hire to be onboarded, right? And so the goal may be that they're to be working independently. So the problem is that you need someone to fill this role and to be working independently by this. So it all ties together. So the problem that it solves may actually tie back specifically to the job description. Like they're solving a problem there. We need somebody to make 6 different rivets a day. Okay, that may to solve, but this problem may be you need them to be able to do that on their own at the end of 90 days, that you need somebody to make 6 rivets alone, whatever that is for you. So make sure that you're clear on what is this problem the goal is solving, not just their role as a whole, but the goal that you're setting for this 90-day period, so that they know what I'm working on right now solves this problem, which ultimately solves the bigger problem.
yes. And because it's all connected, it all builds on each other. And then the coordinates, which is the next building part of this whole thing, is how is it moving towards the company vision? What's that big goal that this person does contribute to? Everyone in your company contributes to it. And we need to make sure that we're communicating what that vision is and how they contribute to it so that they feel like they're a part of the bigger picture. And then when it comes to goal setting, and this is really important for anything, is we need to have measurable results. What's the deadline? Is it a quantity of something? What does the result look like? We need to be able to articulate that. And the accomplished with, and Brenda touched on this before, and this is such a critical piece, is what do they need to accomplish it? Is it a specific type of software? Is it tools? Is it working with a certain person? Coordinating all of that, making sure they have every tool they need to be set up to be successful to accomplish the goal. And then this is where break it down into the milestones, put dates on them, and describe what complete looks like. And that's kind of reiterating what the goal is, but you're talking about what it looks like when it's final.
Yeah. And this is the part where I talked about the accomplished with box. So this is the piece where if you put down the mentor's name here, if you put down a trainer's name, maybe a vendor or whoever that they're going to be working with that would help them solve this goal, you then need to make sure that this goal is communicated with that person so that they're on the same page.
Yes.
And it kind of says that at the bottom by adding the dates to your calendar and anyone else who's working on the goal with you so that they're aware of, right? A lot of times people will have a goal set for themselves, but they won't share it with other people. And then at the last minute, they're coming and being, hey, I need a copy of such and such from you. I have a goal it's due tomorrow. And the person's like, well, I didn't even know this was like, I didn't know you needed this and I can't get that to you right now. So
Yeah.
you're going to have to wait. But if they knew ahead of time that this was your goal, they may have provided it 6 weeks earlier.
Yes. And that's where, again, communication on when you're setting your goals, working through them. And I think that, when you're setting up your goals with the new hire for what their goals are, whoever is supervising them, this is really the role that they need. But on that, if they are having regular, to tie it into the mentor, if they're having regular check-ins with their mentor, weekly, whatever that may be, this would be a good thing for the mentor to review with them. Now, the mentor, again, is not necessarily their trainer, but the mentor can say, hey, let's look at your goal map. We're 3 weeks into your onboarding. What step are you on with getting this done? And this is again where that intervention can happen if things are falling behind, or they haven't gotten access to something, or maybe they just needed somebody to refocus them to say, oh yeah, I'm not quite there yet. I have a question about it, or this is happening, or that's happening. Or it may be a success of, oh, actually, I'm already done. This was a 90-day goal and I finished it in 25 days, which is great. Then you might want to reflect and see, was it done accurately? Was it done well? That also needs to be noted. So maybe that goals are set differently next time. Maybe we're underestimating what can get done. Maybe we thought that these types of things would take more hours of the day than they are. So does the new hire have enough work? Do we need to give them more? What's so important is when you look at these goals, work with the mentor, when the onboarding is finished, is continue to evaluate. So get the feedback. We also have a feedback form that's in our book from the new hire that you can do at the end of the 90 days, but also work with the mentor, work with their supervisor. What went well? What didn't go well? Any of these processes, our books are all titled the hiring process, the onboarding process, the retention. You should have all these processes in place. But once you establish them, does not mean that it is set in stone. These are all meant to be fluid processes that you are continually evolving and adjusting and making better. And when you have that mindset of, I know we have a process, but maybe we need to tweak this and maybe we need to do this. And when that's part of the company culture, is that we constantly reevaluate and adjust as needed, it's going to make the processes even better. And people will know that their voices are being heard again.
That's a great point for anybody listening who maybe thinks they already have a process in place, or maybe they actually do already have a process in place. And maybe it's just a matter of taking this information back to the leadership team and saying, okay, let's look at this new information in light of our process. Is there anything that we need to change, tweak? Should we incorporate this goal map? Should we incorporate, this, that, or the other? Because if sometimes we get in routines and habits, and then we're wondering why our retention is sliding, out the door. And it may be because we haven't looked at these things in a while. And so even if you have a solid onboarding process in place and you're like, nope, we've got it checked off, I've got so-and-so's in charge of it. I implore you to ask so-and-so to grab the book and take a look through it and see if there's anything you can update, add to the process. I mean, all of the processes change with the culture of the world, right? So, and not just the culture in your company, which also changes, but we went from everybody working in the offices to everybody working remotely to now this hybrid thing. And what does onboarding look in a hybrid situation? How does all of that work? And so if you don't even have maybe you have a solid onboarding, but you have nothing for remote hires, and you're like, oh, we forgot to onboard our remote hires. Like we just sent them an email and said, here's your workload, and we forgot the process. So that may be a whole nother section of the process that you need to focus on, is how do we onboard our remote workers just as well as we do our in-person workers, because we want to retain them too. And we want to make sure that they're productive, right? Because they're working from home. We want to make sure that they're productive. So having that goal map in place is so important. What I love about the goal map, as Amanda said, is that it's not just for our onboarding process. We use it across the board. And so once the 90 days is up, depending on where that employee came in through the cycle, they could potentially start another goal map for the next 90 days, or they could maybe pick up one at the beginning of the next quarter or something like that, so that they're continuing on with a goal map. They should always be working on a goal map throughout the year, just depending on your time frame of when they're hired and that kind of thing is when you're gonna, you can shorten one if they come in mid-quarter and then it's going to be over mid-quarter. You can say, okay, let's just write a goal map until the end of this quarter so that we can get you on cycle with everybody else, if that's something you want to do. But using that is really important as you to take an employee through the life cycle of their career with you, really.
Yes. And the goal map reappears in the next book of the process that we have in the series, which is the retention process. And this is where it carries over so much that the goal, we suggest that there are quarterly check-ins, not annual, but quarterly check-ins with the supervisor and their direct report employee, and that they have a goal map for each quarter, and they need to know what they're working towards. And then you evaluate, did we get it done? Did we not get it done? What do we adjust for next time? And continue that constant feedback of that. And a comment that came in, it was like, goal settings often overlooked, but what problem does it solve? It is. It's such a powerful question. And if you're having a hard time articulating that, then we really need to dig in a little bit more of, why did we hire a person? Why did we just feel like they needed to be here? If we can't articulate what problem they solve, then they're not going to feel valued in their position either. And a lot of times it's just about finding the right words for it. But back to Brenda's comment about, maybe you have an onboarding process and you've been doing it forever and so's done it. Be wary of that, because then you fall into the cliche of, well, this is how we've always done it. And there's nothing that will make a motivated employee who is dynamic and maybe has brilliant ideas that could change things leave faster than if they are continually hearing, that's how we've always done it. So if you really want retention, then you're going to need to be open to constantly evolving your processes, how you do things to fit your team, what's best practices now versus what best practices were 10 years ago. And then also, what is the worldly culture right now? Are we working from home? Are we doing hybrid? If we're doing hybrid, what's the expectations of being in the office? Is it an office that used to have to be super formal business dress and now we're more casual? Things are constantly evolving, and we've got to be able to stay that. And it doesn't mean that you can't have high expectations. And I think that sometimes is a misnomer. Still have your high expectations. Just make sure you're communicating it correctly, but make sure you're evolving where appropriate and where it makes you a competitive employer, because we want to retain those employees.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions? That runs through the specifics of the digital tool that we downloaded, but obviously we can continue to talk about onboarding and employee retention for a long time. So any other questions for those of you that are watching? What specific challenges do you have in your onboarding, or what have you experienced in your onboarding? When you've gone through it, what was your best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? What are you seeing as an onboarding challenge? Is it the remote onboarding? I think that is a challenge for some people, and we've seen that. And this is where it comes to communication. Of communicating effectively is so important when we're doing things that are digital. We don't need to have meetings for the sake of having meetings. We don't need to have, sit here on Zoom just so that we can see that a person is actively working. So how do we communicate things better? And it's a matter of setting up whatever the process is. And how do you follow up on the goals? Is it a weekly check-in? Is it a document? Does it necessarily have to be face-to-face? And just deciding what those parameters will be, sticking to them, and making sure you're communicating effectively.
Yeah, I think it's important also to take into consideration the roles that we're talking about, right? And that the mentorship could be different across your company based on the different roles, right? For instance, the company that my daughter was working at previously, they had very much blue collar workers and very much white collar workers, right? And so different onboarding is going to happen in each of those, because we're going through different procedures, we're going through different things. So onboarding is going to look a little bit different. When they can meet, how they can meet, are they meeting in person, are they not meeting in person, those type of things. And then it's also important to take on, when you're asking about experiences, it made me think of my own personality with onboarding, because I'm very much visionary, and I'm very much, let's get this done and go, go, go. I don't want to have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. I don't like wasting time in that way. Not that I don't waste time in other ways, but I don't like wasting it in that way. And so when someone's like, oh, let's get together and meet, I'm like, well, what for? And so when you're setting up this mentorship program, having the employee understand what the they're meeting with the mentor and what the benefit is for them is so important. And to make sure that it fits right with the role that they're in. If you're asking them to be, get through this 90 days and you've set all these big goals for them, and then you're like, oh, and by the way, you need to meet with Susie Q 7 times during this time, they're gonna be like, what? I don't have time. I have to do all this other stuff. But if they understand that, I want you to meet with your mentor, but these are the ways you can meet with them. You guys will determine what works best for you, blah, 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 whatever y'all set up in your business. It's just important to have the flexibility to do it. It's like Amanda said, we've been doing it this way forever. Nope. Have the flexibility within your own company to set up different mentorship programs the way that it works for the department and the roles that the employees are in. Because you want to be respectful of people's time. You don't own your employees. They're there giving their gifts and talents to you. And so while you're rewarding them, hopefully with a very nice paycheck and benefits, it should be a give and take relationship, right? And so it shouldn't be this, well, you've got to attend this meeting and you have to do that, kind of like the comment said earlier. Nothing should be mandatory on either side as far as you have to do these things, you have to be a mentor all of a sudden, you have to do these things, but that it's flexible and fits into their schedule and their roles. It's really important.
Absolutely.
People want to feel valued.
Yes, definitely. Question came up of, have you come across any research on the extent of which poor onboarding affects employee retention? Oh, so much. Oh, so much.
Can I just tell you my experience?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think we have personal experiences there, and I have a stat sheet that I keep on hand, and maybe pull up that one. And this one isn't specifically about just onboarding, but like one report, and it was just from 2022, so not very old by any means. And it came out that said 4 out of 10 workers are actively disengaged if they get little to no feedback. And I think that plays such a role in what we're talking about here, is that we need to have that communication and the mentorship and checking in and goals. This is the feedback opportunity and creating a culture of feedback. And when we don't do that, and the employees don't get it, then they become disengaged. And we know what happens to disengaged employees. They will leave at some point.
They will leave. I mean, if you're not engaging with them in the first 90 days, and then you're trying to go back later and create this engagement because now you know that they're on their way out the door, you're probably not going to save the relationship. So if you can set up that expectation of engagement and open communication and feedback, like Amanda said, the company culture of feedback, it's just going to be a healthier situation all the way around. And people are going to feel valued right out of the gate. Like, oh, wow, I just started at this company. They already want my feedback. And that would make me feel pretty, oh, okay, I'm valued. They want my feedback already. And I just got here. So I think it's really important to understand that the opposite of that is if they're ignored, if they don't feel prepared for the work that you're requiring of them, or if they're just seen as another body in the room or another number on your, roll call or whatever, they're not going to stay long. People want to feel valued, and the culture has changed so much than the last 5 years, really, with, everybody was leaving and then everybody was coming back. And then, the shifts in employment have just changed so much that we have to show people, I mean, generational is also a thing, right? And so generations coming, they want to feel valued for their, like Amanda said, if you have somebody who's dynamic and they have ideas to share and you're just squashing them down or not giving them a space for that, they're not going to stick around long. They want to be heard and they want to share, why you hired them to begin with. You hired them for a reason. Hopefully, you hired them for a good skill set and you want to put that to use, but you've got to show them on the front end that you're prepping them for the job, you're preparing them, you want to hear from them, that you actually care about them. It's really what it comes down to.
And I think what you just said, it answered the follow-up question that just came in, which was, why would you say that if you don't feel, why would you stay if you don't feel engaged, right? Like you want to feel that you're valued and worth. And that's actually the subtitle of the 3rd book in our series, is about a culture of worth. So that, she asked, what was the study of that one specific statistic? Let me pull it up to do that. So go ahead, Brenda.
I was just going to say, while you're doing that, I was going to give them some housekeeping notes, I guess. So make sure that if you haven't already registered for this event, do so you can get the toolbox that we shared today. And then we also offer consulting on this specific issue. So if you need help building out an onboarding system, building out a mentorship training, anything like that, Amanda is available to do consulting on that. And then there is a course as well. So if you have somebody in your company, what we've seen a lot of times, and that's specifically who we created the book series for, is for people who are kind of thrust into an HR position who maybe they are not the HR person. They didn't go to school for HR, but they're maybe the most senior person on the staff, or they're the CFO, so they're already handling people's money and things like that. So they're like, oh, they can handle their social security numbers too. So no big deal. Let's just make them the HR person. And then they're like, oh, hold on, I don't have processes in place. And so we have a course that is very reasonable. For under $150, you can educate your staff and get them going in a full HR setup. I mean, they would be trained to go through all 4 processes to set that up for your company. It's well worth it to set it up from the start, the right way. But if you've already gone through this, if you've already set these things up in your company, I mean, for under $150, it's worth a refresh, right? It's really worth taking a look at and saying, are there some changes we need to make? Or maybe you set them up, but now somebody's sitting in the role. Maybe they need the system so that they can, go back through and get refreshed, get trained on it, because that's what we're seeing across the board is there are wonderful HR professionals out there, but most of those HR professionals are working at, Fortune 500 companies, and small businesses are just floundering in the HR department because there's nobody to fill the roles. And so that's what we really created the system for: the books, the course, and the consulting that we offer for that.
Yes, it is. It was very much is actually what happened to me right out of college, thrown into, because my background was actually in finance, small business, and I was thrown into an HR role. Because that was just added on to what I was supposed to be doing. And so statistic that I like to reference on there is that 62% of small businesses don't have a dedicated HR person. That's a huge part, and that's where someone else is just trying to do it. And it's often the last role when you look at the big leadership roles that are in a typical company. It's actually usually the last role that is hired, because you just try to patchwork it together. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that's fine, but you just need to make sure you're still giving it the appropriate effort and attention that it needs when it comes to HR. And you don't have to have a degree in human resources to do it well. You just need to have the right tool set up. You need to be a good communicator, also includes listening, and just be willing to do the feedback part of it and really build the relationships with your team. And because retention really comes down to the relationship. And
Absolutely.
relationships are built on trust.
Absolutely. I think that that's a fascinating statistic, considering the number of small businesses that go under every year. And when you think of if they're flailing in the HR department and then their company's sinking, I would love to know the correlation between the two, but there has to be some correlation, right? I mean, the numbers are there.
That is a great way of looking at it too. Yes, I think, and I mean, we've seen it. We've seen small businesses that struggle with HR, and we've come in and worked on it and cleaned things up. And then sometimes when leadership's not on board to do that, then that's where there's a power dynamic and it's an issue. But yes, so I have dropped the links. So for the HR course, it is $129.99, and that covers all 4 parts of the series. We also do sell it individually if there's just one specific part that you're really needing to focus on. So it is available in that capacity as well. We've got the books available, and we'll drop the link for that again. And these books,
Yay, they're audio now too.
these books are available ebook, print, audio.
And each of the 4 books comes with its own toolbox, so you're set up for what you need.
Yes, so there's something else I was going to mention. It's the toolboxes. So yes, there's a toolbox with each book, and it is a digital download, very similar to what you got today, but more robust. What was in today's is part of that, but it covers a whole lot more with what you get with the digital download. And that's just a part of the book, and the opt-in is there to do that and get that. And so you can customize it to work for your business. What goals do you have for your business? How does that work? And so we've got the books, we've got consultations, love sitting down and helping individuals, like what is the struggle that you're working on, and the challenge in your company that you just need an outside perspective to help get you over that hump so that you can build the processes yourself. And that's really what the goal of all of this is we're giving you the templates and the framework, and then helping you develop your own so that you can continue to do and you implement the process and you can continue to build your business off of it without necessarily having to hire a full-time HR person, because you may not be there yet in your company. And that's a big expense, but you can do it on your own well, and maybe a little bit better, if you've got the right tools in place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you for the great questions and the feedback. I don't know if it's Iveta or Iveta, but I love your name. And thank you for the comments. She says, it's like playing a game. Why would you play the game if you don't enjoy it or get bored or feel like you're bored? And it's so true. People aren't going to stay around if they're not enjoying what they're doing. And part of that enjoyment is engagement. But on the flip side of that, not everybody likes, that's where I said, you have to figure out the role, right? Not everybody wants somebody there engaging them all the time when they're trying to work. So setting those parameters is so, so important on the front end. But once that's set, people would know and they would prosper in the situation. So
Yes, definitely.
it's all there for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for being here today, everybody.
That does wrap it up. I am going to post the link one more time if you did not opt in to get today's digital tools, you can do that there. And we will send a replay of this out later today once Zoom's finished doing its thing and it's all ready to go and I get it linked up. And we will send the toolbox out with that as well. So if you missed it before it started, you can still get it then. And stay tuned. We'll announce more information about the next workshop we have coming up. And that'll also be included in emails coming out. So thank you.
Absolutely. You can mark your calendars, March 28th.
Yes. Yes.
Mark your calendars.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.